Welcome to episode 2 of season 2, this segment of the show Calm Down with James Eade. I'm James Eade, and I'm going to bring in my senior anger correspondent from Los Angeles, Rick Rosner. Rick, how are you today?
I'm okay. My wife's out of town, so I'm
A
just
bachelor.
yeah, and I'm out of control. I sleep whenever. I feed the dogs whenever. I touch myself more than when she's around. I haven't showered in I don't know how many days. I'm pretty ripe. So, and I apologize for going with the obvious gripe.
Oh, okay.
Which is
So
we got 4 weeks. We have 4 weeks to go.
Right.
And we knew anybody who, is not an idiot knew that the amount of lies and bullshit would be, it's actually maybe even a little less than I would have anticipated 6 months ago. And we know it would take the form of whatever is available to lie about. And it turns out that that's Hurricane Helene. And in a couple of days, it'll be Hurricane Milton.
Right.
George Bush famously did a bad job with Hurricane Katrina.
Right.
And the Republicans and the pundits on the right are trying to make it seem like the response to Hurricane Helene has been as bad, even though the governors of all the states involved and various public figures there are saying, no, FEMA is giving us everything we need. And the most garbagey lie is that you get $750 if you're a Helene victim, and that's it. That's your FEMA money, which is, no, that's just stupid. But people believe it. That's a fast first payment with almost no red tape so that you can buy food and diapers, right. And then further monies will come in days and weeks and years. I've seen tweets saying, yeah, just look at what happened to Maui, which burnt down.
Right.
Arguing that they only got $750, which they didn't. They've been getting, depending on what your actual needs turn out to be, up to $42,000 to pay for accommodations until you can rebuild.
And there's something rotten about politicizing such a disaster. I mean, the people there are suffering. And, it's up to all of us to, do what we can and contributing to, in some way, to the recovery. Because right on the heels of a devastating hurricane, there's another one. And I'm close to someone in Georgia, and their town was pretty much leveled. She was charging her phone at a Food Lion. I didn't know what Food Lion is, but my wife did, and so I guess that's a big thing in Georgia, though. So, but
Piggly Wiggly, Food Lion,
yeah, that kind of thing, right? Yeah, I only know Piggly Wiggly from driving Miss Daisy.
But a related lie is that people are only getting $750 because FEMA spent all its money on illegal immigrants.
Oh yeah.
Which is, it's slightly more complicated. It's still a lie, but because there's a little bit more complexity to it, it makes it easier to lie about, because the people who want to buy the lie have no patience with complexity.
Right.
And also, I mean, FEMA isn't short of money because of immigrants. It's short of money because of we're having more disasters lately.
Right.
And because Congress is dysfunctional, maybe intentionally so in this case, because Mike Johnson won't hold a vote for additional funds until after the election.
Right.
To help perpetuate the bullshit.
That lie. Yeah. No, but both of us expected a real firestorm of negativity coming out of the Trump campaign. Maybe they're short of funds and can't do a lot of the advertising, but some of the advertising is pretty annoying. I read Maureen Dow's essay in the New York Times over the weekend, and they're playing the gender card with Kamala, and like
what is that? You're a pussy if you're a man and you vote for her?
Or more so that she's going to be soft on defense, and that as if Trump is some wildly respected figure when he's really a bootlicker for Putin.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the one reason we had fewer. I mean, the timing of all these conflicts is suspect to some extent because it weighs against Biden. But not everything that every country or group of terrorists does is to cause an effect in the U.S.
Right.
But it might be in their top 7 reasons for timing stuff. Right. And the one reason that there was less of this under Trump is because Trump was laying down for him anyway.
Right.
And why piss off your friend?
And why was Russia so clearly involved in misinformation in the last election with Trump? They wanted Trump in there.
Yeah. Now you talked about running short of funds. I looked it up this morning, and through the election so far, in past and future spending, the Dems have laid out $1.8 billion, and the GOP only $1.3 billion. So Dems almost 40% more, which I hope is being
staggering numbers.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the way it's been lately. They say in 2016, just by saying a bunch of assholish stuff, Trump received $4 billion in free media coverage. But if he had to buy all the minutes on CNN, MSNBC, etc., spent talking about him, it would have cost $4 billion.
Wow. Yeah. And so it's like there's 2 things I see in the media. I don't know if this plays into your gripe or not, but there's almost Trump is so outlandish in his statements that the media hardly even covers it anymore because it's not news. And so when he holds a rally and he's meandering and loses track of what he's saying, what he's talking about, and makes up these incredible false statements, the media doesn't really cover it, and it's almost like they make it sound like he's sane. Because what they do report, they try to clean it up a little bit. And,
a woman on Twitter named Parker Malloy came up with the term sane washing, where you take
sane washing, beautiful.
Yeah, you take insane stuff and the coverage puts it in some kind of context that lessens the impact. But it's hard for stuff to make an impact anyway because. Well, we're down to only about 3% of voters being undecided, and that might be the 3% paying with weird thoughts about everything, or just not caring, not paying attention, not super persuadable. On one of the Pod TV shows last week, we had a polling expert, Carl Allen, just published a book about this, and I said the numbers now look frighteningly like Hillary's numbers. And he said not at all, because at this point for Hillary Trump, 15% of voters were undecided, and now we're down to 3% undecided. And so that 15%, when Comey sicked the FBI on Hillary again with 11 days to go.
Right.
A lot of that 15% moved. This time around, all sorts of outrageous shit can happen, and there aren't as many people to move.
Right. There was an interesting kind of a poll of undecided people. It wasn't really a poll. An interview of several undecided people, and
after the VP debate.
After the first Trump-Biden debate, And one of them said, excuse me, Rick, viewers, he said, with Trump, it's hell no. With Biden, it's oh no. And so I think the Kamala Harris replacing him was a real act of patriotism by Biden stepping down, because I think if Trump would have won pretty handily. And now the issue is in doubt up to just a few swing states that are up for grabs. And I think one of the keys is Pennsylvania. And I know that Bob Casey is running in Pennsylvania, and I think his advantage is narrowing. So it's very, very close. Who knows?
Yeah. Georgia just a few hours ago reinstated the 6-week abortion ban.
Yes, I saw that.
Which is terrible, but also not terrible if it mobilizes voters.
Right. Well, I think those people are pretty mobilized after the Supreme Court did what they did with Roe v. Wade. And I think that one of the things that Harris could be doing more of is hammering that issue. We don't leave certain things to the states, as that Trump and Vance have been saying. Like, for example, slavery. If we left that to the states, some of the states would have still had it. There are things that make you a United States, and having these values have to be shared values. And so I think allowing states to make up their rights, so that people have to leave their state to go to another state to get adequate medical care. And I love Wall's comments about that. Is just mind your own business. You don't want the government involved in that.
At some point, you have to ask me, what am I doing to manage my rage?
Yes.
And
thank you. That's my job, to ask you that.
But I don't know, because I might be burning out a little bit. I still do plenty of angry tweets, and I'm less reserved than ever before. I just go ahead and tweet. Like every other tweet is, if you're still voting for Trump, you're going to hell.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't personally believe in hell, but the people who are voting for him do. And under their standards, it's that joke that's been told so many times, the guy who's waiting to be rescued from a flood because God told him he was sending help, and he drowns after 3 people come by with boats. Then he gets to St. Peter, and wait, what? Did I lose my point here?
Well, he probably said, why did you send help?
Oh, yeah, that's it. That's the point. And God said, yeah, I sent boats for you, dude. And the deal is that for the past 8-9 years, God has been sending, example and illustration, dozens and hundreds of indications that Trump is a bad guy. He's not the David of the Bible. David did a bunch of bad stuff, King David, but then he sought redemption. There's no indication that Trump has ever sought redemption
or feels any remorse.
No,
or anything.
So there's plenty of evidence that when you're standing before St. Peter at the pearly gates, you're going to have a hard time justifying your support for Trump.
Well, I also think, to not go into the afterlife so much as do you or do you not believe in democracy?
Well, a lot of people don't anymore. There are a zillion people. No, I mean, so for the first 2 Trump elections, you could argue that, people have legitimate gripes that lead them to Trump. And that's still true. But it felt a little bad to argue that people are just dumb or racist or just wanting people not themselves to suffer. But this third time around, for a big chunk of the Trump electorate, it seems like the worst assumptions about them are correct.
Yeah.
And so there are a zillion people on Twitter tweeting, We're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic. And
representative democracy.
Whatever. I mean, and what's the difference? And tweeting about how awful it would be if we had majority rule, which is senseless.
Well, you know, I think that the 2016 people that voted for Trump, I understood, because it was like everyone was sick of a divided Congress that couldn't do anything, and they wanted to throw a monkey wrench into it. And Trump seemed like the perfect monkey wrench. But we didn't know what we know about him now. And you can't pretend to not know the man. You know, 6 bankruptcies, you know, the Trump organization has been fined for fraud. You know, his Trump University was a joke. All these products that he's been peddling, you know, it's all a joke. Everything he touches, he ends up ruining in some way, or certainly it's not successful. And these types of things are clear now, unless you say that everybody is, you know, and I do hear this, it's politically motivated, you know, 34
right, yeah, it's lawfare, but 8 juries in the past year, 5 grand juries. Now, I know it's easy to get an indictment from a grand jury, but still 5 of them. And 2 civil juries find him liable for raping E. Jane Carroll with his fingers. Right. And then 1 jury finds him guilty of fraud. 8 juries. Right. You know, they're not all like, you know, out to get Trump. Some of the people on those juries are Trump voters, and they listen to the evidence.
Right. And that's the other thing, is everything's rigged. You know, every time you lose, it's rigged. Mm-hmm. Now, come on. Sometimes you lose. And what we were taught is when you lose, you go and shake hands with your opponents. And that's just not the way that Trump is wired. He was brought up by Fred Trump, who taught him that if you pay taxes, you're a loser. And so he's been avoiding taxes all his life and thinking that it makes him smart. And so this is part of the fraud convictions. And these are he's convicted because he's guilty. You know, there isn't any, you know, it's not Biden targeting his political opponents. That's total nonsense. What we have is someone who's been caught and is found guilty, is yet to be held accountable, though, because he keeps appealing and delaying. And the Supreme Court has been his friend, so he's still able to delay until after the election, being held accountable for what he's clearly done.
Yeah, so let me talk about the effects on me.
Okay.
Since Trump got elected, I've lost like more than 20 pounds, mostly through diarrhea during the Trump presidency years.
Anxiety.
I worry. There's this stuff called cortisol, which is a stress hormone, which raises inflammation levels. And I'm hoping I'm just not always full of cortisol. But like last week, like every once in a while, I'll get a little bit of, it's probably not AFib yet, you know, but I had, my heart was going like 150 beats a minute for like 20 minutes. And it was probably because I drank too much coffee.
Yeah, but that's probably twice what your resting heart rate is normally.
Yes. Yeah. So I notice if I overdo the coffee, it'll make it do that.
Okay.
And then last night, I woke up with vertigo, with dizziness. And I think it's because I cleaned my ears yesterday the way you're not supposed to do it, with a Q-tip. And I probably pushed some earwax, you know, into a eustachian tube and made it.
Well, yeah, your inner ear is the balance. So yeah, that may very well be true. What do I know? But
but like, I don't know. Do I have 4 more weeks, and maybe more if frickin' Trump gets elected, of freaking out? And what will that do to me physically?
Right. This is why we need these techniques, the tools and techniques to practice to calm down, because our dislike of Trump doesn't affect him one way or the other, but it does affect us.
Yeah.
So I used to have this saying that I would go around every morning and give thanks for being reminded to not hate Trump. But I actually had to change that to give thanks for being reminded to forgive Trump. I mean, he's a miserable person. You know, he wakes up at 3 a.m. and tweets angrily. You know,
yeah, but it would be nicer if he's I'm hoping he's a miserable person who's not president again.
Yes. So he can do a great deal of damage. And you don't want the country led by someone who's going to divide us.
Yeah.
You know, their primary job is to unite the United States. Right now, we live in the divided states of America.
So here's another thing I do, where I'm Jewish, so I'm not a Christian.
Right.
But I do like, mosaic art is really cheap. Art made out of little pieces of glass.
Yeah,
because it's just not a popular thing. So you can buy. I kind of collect them because they're not $1,000. They're like $100, and so I can buy one every once in a while. And I bought this really good Jesus. Let's see, can you see Jesus? There he is.
Yes.
All right, Jesus and his friends.
That's all glass beads, huh? Wow.
That's made out of little chunks of glass. It weighs a ton. It had fallen off a wall probably, and
I just lost Rick. So sorry. I think we should bring this show to a close. This segment of the show to a close at this point, unless Rick comes back right away. But Rick is our anger correspondent from Los Angeles. I say Southern California, but and has always been able to share his gripes, what's bothering him, what's upsetting him, and then we talk a little bit about how we can calm down. And for me, the deep breaths are my go-to. But find what works for you, because what works for me may not work for you. Here's Rick back. Hi, Rick.
Sorry.
That's
moving the computer knocked me off somehow. But
that's all right.
So, I look at Jesus all the time. He's right across from my desk. And I'm like, even though I don't believe in you, please, please, please show up and clean house and rapture all the a-holes to Jupiter. There's an ice moon of Jupiter, Europa. We're sending a spacecraft to it. And it's supposed to be pretty warm because it's radioactive in the center. And you could live a pretty nice life there if somebody dug out an ice cave for you. So, Jesus has not responded yet, but I remain hopeful.
Yes. And so, this is another way to manage your stress, is to ask for help. And whatever that source of help might be, it might be different for other people than us. But, there is help to be had if you reach out for it. And it's one of those things that we say is that if someone reaches out their hand for help, be there to take it. So, Rick, I thank you for joining us again. And we'll both try to manage our anger. And we have until, is it November 3rd? I have my official ballot now. So I'm going to vote by mail.
But yeah, ours arrived a couple of days ago. Yeah.
Right. So we'll be in touch. And until then, work on calming down.
Yeah, I nap.
Yes. and I know what else you do.
Yeah, every time it's like we're going to be like, yeah, well, let's see what my nether parts are up for.
Well, on that note, I'll say goodbye, and until next time.
All right, see you then.
Bye-bye. And that was Rick Rosner, and that is the end of our show, this segment of the show. Thank you for viewing, and when you come back next time, we're going to have more gripes to talk about and more to say about how to stay calm. Welcome to this show, this segment of the show, Calm Down with James Eade. And this segment is to help us calm down using yoga methodologies, yoga principles, yoga practices. And I have a yoga teacher and therapist with us now. Yudhishthira, would you join us? Thank you. There you are.
Here I am.
You were backstage all the time, weren't you?
I was indeed.
So today we're going to go on to talk about the chakras. Is that right?
We are, and we'll see how it goes. There's a lot to cover.
Well, I will leave you to it, and let me know if I can be of any assistance. But I will be backstage.
Okay. Well, if you can go ahead and let's see what that
image.
I'll cue you when it's time to put up that image. Yeah. Okay.
That's fine.
Okay. Great.
Okay. You can blame your producer if there's any problem.
Hello, friends, and for those of you who've been following along, we have come through the yamas, niyamas of yoga. Last week, I actually extended the yamas, niyamas into their natural progression, which is to say that there are 8 stages of awakening that are described in yoga by one of the principal chroniclers of yoga. His name was Patanjali. And it's not terribly important to know anything about him in particular. In fact, oftentimes in the Yoga Sutras, he would refer to himself in the third person in the same way that sometimes Rumi or Hafiz will do in their poetry. So this idea of the chakra system is something that has become so popular that it has lost some of its meaning. And as I say, it's been adopted in sort of a new age way. Now, on one hand, that's not a bad thing. I mean, for the idea of energy centers within us to become part of popular culture, I don't consider that to be a negative. It's only to say that it's similar to things like karma. That people use karma, they toss around the word a lot without really having a true understanding of what it means, other than, in the case of karma, it means something that comes back to you like a boomerang. And so people want instant karma. So when it comes to the chakras, a lot of people are sort of caught in some sort of a ungrounded sort of a place, talking about seeing the colors of the chakras. Again, not a bad thing. Only to say that there's a depth of meaning, and to understand that the chakras are not imaginary. In order to actually begin with talking about the chakras, we need to think about, first of all, karma and reincarnation, because in the bigger picture of karma and reincarnation, there is this recycling of the essence of who you are or I am through many lifetimes, and never completely remembering previous lifetimes, but having hints of them that come to us. And those hints tend to come to us as coming from one of these energy centers, the chakras, or another. Let me give you a metaphor that works beautifully. The energy system of the chakras flows through a main pathway. I'm not going to use all the Sanskrit names, but this main pathway is an energy pathway, and it's not unlike a underground conduit through which water flows. And think of it in terms of a stream or a creek or a river, that this river of energy that runs through you, when the energy is high and the flow of energy is to capacity, everything is moving upward freely. However, just like a stream or a river, when the water runs low, when the energy becomes low, some things begin to happen. And this energy river, just like a river in the material world, when the water level goes down, stuff begins to accumulate in little depressions along the edge of the river. And so stuff gets trapped there. That stuff often ends up going around and around in a circle. In a river, we would call that an eddy. But in the chakras, we call it a vritti, V-R-I-T-T-I. It's just a little spinning whirlpool where energy is trapped. Now, in the energy system of the chakras is not sticks and leaves and other debris that accumulate and go round and round. But just like that eddy in a river, when the river rises and the energy begins to flow, that debris gets washed away. And what was trapped there becomes able to move along and expand into the ocean. All these are really excellent metaphors for the energy system of the chakras. Now, the energy system of the chakras itself, usually we count them as 7 in total. I'm going to give you a slightly different view of that, and I'll explain it why in just a moment. So at this point, I want to ask Jim to please go ahead and put up that image if you can. There you go. And can I move to the side? I think I can. There we go. Everything's backwards here, so there we go. All right, so that's enough that I can begin to talk to you a little bit about what you're seeing on the screen. So the chakra system is one that goes from the base of the spine to the crown of the head. Now, the picture that Jim has put up there only contains a tiny little bit of information, but it's enough to get us started. And so it's helpful to know that each of these energy centers has a reference that we can make to the physical spine. Here's the problem with doing that. We oftentimes think of the material spine as being the reality, and the energy system is sort of an extension of that. And it's exactly the reverse. It's completely turned around. The physical spine manifests itself from the energy pattern. Everybody knows that this works in daily life. I think it's worthwhile to note that for all of us who are viewing this right now, that there is not a thorough knowledge for most of us about how this is happening. How is my image? How is my voice? How is this show being brought to you on a computer or a cell phone? All these things involve technologies that are non-physical realities. They all come down to a movement of energy in predictable patterns that end up resulting in things that our senses can actually perceive. So in working with the system of the chakras, it's helpful to understand that it's not really that big of a stretch to realize that these chakras are a non-physical reality, but they are more permanent, more long-lasting than the physical form that we presently are in. So karma and reincarnation means that as we move from lifetime to lifetime, we keep accumulating karma, which lodge in different chakras like seeds or, again, vrittis, that in another incarnation, given the right circumstance, those seeds will sprout and give us the opportunity to either master or overcome that thing that has been carried over. And you can look at it as something either positive, like, hey, things went so well in this lifetime that, I expect everything's going to go great from here on out. And so then that next lifetime, you might have that seed of success sprout only to find that nothing works out, because that's what you need. The end result of all karma is not positive or negative, it's neutral. The nature of karma is that everything balances out. So when we begin working our way up through the chakras, it's helpful to recognize that they have a quality that is always going to become more expansive as you work your way up. And as you begin at the very first quality, or first chakra rather, and here you'll see that they have words that are in Sanskrit. And then they have a red label next to them that has that quality that relates to that chakra. And then below each one, you'll see that it relates to or is oriented to the physical spine. So the Muladhara chakra is sometimes called the root or earth chakra. It is located relative to the coccyx. If you want right now, and I'm looking at my clock to make sure I don't run too much over, if you squeeze the pelvic floor and anus, close your eyes, and then relax those muscles, the center of where the tension was is going to be the location of that root chakra. So the first chakra is related to the earth element. It's solid, it's grounded in the physical body. It relates to the legs and feet. The Swadhisthana chakra, this next one up, is relative to the sacral region, and its element is water. I'm not going to ask you to squeeze the muscles around each of these. Maybe we will do that in the future. It's helpful. But water is much more changeable in its nature. The second chakra has a lot to do with those things that are deeply sensual. And I don't mean that simply in terms of sex, but it does apply to that. But the quality of this chakra is that of fluidity. Creativity is very much originates, that is channeled through this. People with relationship issues that come up over and over again in a lifetime will want to look at this particular chakra and begin to learn how to work with it and to free up the energy that's in it. The third chakra up is behind the navel, behind the abdominal organs, and in front of the lumbar spine. And the element there is fire. The quality of this not only is fire, but also of fiery self-control. That you learn to contain this fire and use it for your personal spiritual growth. I hope it is becoming clear that the qualities, the positive qualities of each of these is an additive quality. It's you add it to the one above it, and they become a single flow that is of increasing power and also increasingly potentially expansive. When we come to the heart center, Vishuddha, it is the cervical center that is behind the heart in front of the thoracic spine. Its quality is that of ether. Now, ether here is not the substance, although the chemical formula of ether itself is very expansive. It's volatile. And that's the nature of the heart's tendency when it's focused in the material world. It tends to be volatile. I really love this. I really hate that. When we come up to the next level above it, I'm sorry, I got off track. The heart center is the anahat, and the quality is air. I apologize. I'm looking at my clock here, and I know I'm going to go over by a minute. So the anahat center is air, and air, again, like a hot air balloon. When it's heated, it rises, it expands. The Vishuddha chakra is the throat chakra. That is where ether, and this center can be extremely volatile. Think about what happens when the heart is angry, what happens to your words. When the heart is at peace, the center is calm. And so the Vishuddha center is associated with the quality of calmness. When it comes to the sixth center, which is the spiritual eye, my guru pointed out very clearly that it has two poles like a magnet. The negative pole is at the medulla, the base of the brain, where all of our animal functions originate. We don't have to think about breathing. Our primal instincts are all originate here, and it can lead to a lot of problems. And this is the seat of the ego, which is simply the spirit identified with the body and mind. The positive poles here are the spiritual eye. A lot of people know about the spiritual eye. This is the Agya center. Yogananda described this as super ether that is like infinite space. There is a seventh chakra, which is called the Sahasrara, and it's sometimes called the 1,000-petaled lotus. It's also called the crown chakra, and it is, when it's fully open, we have achieved the goal of yoga, which one would say in the 8 limbs of yoga, we have reached samadhi. So that is an introduction to it, and it is just the bare beginning because there is so much more. And so, but I think that's enough for today. So, Jim?
Yes, that was great. Thank you so much for that. I learned a lot, although I practice the chakras every day. But I wrote down instant karma. You and I know.
We want karma to be instant, and it simply, the reality is that oftentimes karma, we don't even remember why something's coming our way.
Yes, of course. And also, it's like I used to say, immediate gratification was not good enough for me. It wasn't fast enough.
Well, your book on freedom from addiction is a great example of people who are addicts. They look at all kinds of things, their childhood, the relationship with their mother and father, the models they had. And I'm not saying those aren't important, but those are also part of the karma. And the bigger karma is for them to recognize that the addiction that they are experiencing has great implications for future lifetimes. Because for those people who are able to successfully overcome addiction in this lifetime, it is huge.
Yes.
And I recognize it within my own lifetime.
Right.
That turning point for me, when I no longer craved drugs or alcohol or improper relationships with people.
Right.
When those things ceased, that I immediately had the sense of being free.
Yes.
And yet, that addiction that I suffered from, and I would say that is true for all addictions, no matter whether it's to money or sex or booze or whatever.
Right.
That all addictions have their origins in previous lifetimes.
And the eddy that you're talking about, something stuck. Yeah.
Yeah. And those are simply like really big eddies where a lot of stuff is trapped. And so it takes a lot of energy, and some of it is also willpower to begin to increase that flow of energy. Anyway, there's a lot, about that, right. But it's willpower will only take us so far.
Absolutely. That has been certainly my experience. The other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit with you, or to reinforce with you how important it is for me, is that everything is about getting in balance, that karma is neutral. And I think of it in terms of my different, the mind, the heart, the spirit. I want to be integrated. I had a friend that said, your ego is not an amigo, your amigo. And I want to be friends with my ego too. I don't want to push it aside or shunt it aside or think badly of it. My ego can get me in trouble, certainly. But if I can be friends with it, then it's going to help me, just as my heart. If I can, and I loved the way if your heart is angry, then your words fail you. Yeah, it's so that's the integration. So if you can be calm, then you can say.
I've come to think of my ego more like a well-trained dog, and a smart dog, like a German Shepherd, not a beagle, a German Shepherd. And
nothing against beagles.
Nothing against beagles. I had one. That's why I know that beagles operate only from one primal instinct, and that's food.
Yeah. Yeah. My labs were like that. Loving dogs, but
a German Shepherd, when well trained, becomes a wonderful ally. And that's how the ego is that the ego abides in the area of us, which is the region of subconsciousness.
Yes.
And in the subconscious region, we can either have bad habits, and the ego certainly enjoys that,
right?
Or it can be replaced with good habits, and then the ego becomes a wonderful ally.
Yes.
A wonderful friend. And Yogananda and Swami Kriyananda, my teacher and guru, respectively, both made it very clear the ego is not the enemy.
Right. That's where I was going.
And people really, really have somehow come into this place where the ego is the enemy. Right. And that's unfortunate because the ego is necessary.
Yes.
It has to be brought on board.
Right.
But you can catch it. All you have to do is sit down and see if you can still your mind. Get the mind completely still. See if you can do it for 30 seconds.
Yes.
And if you can, good for you. Try it for a minute. Everyone is going to have some limit. For most people, well, actually, I have to be honest, for me, when I first began, it was in the matter of seconds that my mind would be still. And then something would occur. My ego wanted attention.
Yes.
And so it's been a lot of willpower, a lot of training, but also a lot of divine grace. That's allowed me to come to this place where I can now keep my mind still for extended periods of time. Right. Usually.
Yeah. Well, Divya, the woman who's going to close the show, taught me, because I had the same problem, and I wanted to be taught how to meditate because I couldn't do it. And she asked me why I couldn't, and I said monkey mind. And she said, well, can you visualize clouds in the sky rolling through? And I said, yes. She says, every time the monkey starts to chatter, put a monkey on the cloud and let it drift away. And about a couple 500 monkeys later, I was able to be calm for a minute, and then it grew from there. And so you have to start someplace, and baby steps at first, but you can calm your mind, and that stillness is very useful. But I love that the ego is your ally if it's well trained.
Exactly. And so
there's one other thing I wanted to comment on in my practices. When we're talking about the sixth chakra, and making conscious contact with the spiritual eye.
Are you talking about the crown chakra?
Oh no, the
spiritual eye.
Spiritual eye. Yeah, that's the fifth. Then I lost count. So the spiritual eye, thinking when I'm trying to make conscious contact, visualize it, I'm thinking of the eternal now. So what you were talking about just triggered that thought in me that's the way I visualize it. If I can, just be fully present right here, right now. And that's the stillness aspect of it as well. And so I use a visualization of that, and I wait until I can see it before I proceed. And
there's a lot, you have a lot of experience, and I don't, it's not universal by any means yet, but you have a lot of experience that you're drawing from, and that ability, for example, using Divya's model is one, there's many variations on that, but that's a great one. Mm-hmm. And, for myself in my own practice, oftentimes what I will do is to take a period of time in which I'm using certain techniques, but it's about existing without my body and mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it means I'm in a place that at first would seem to be completely silent and absent of light and absent of awareness. And none of those are true. When you come into that place, all of those senses, every one of them, the touch of the sense of feel,
yes,
sight, sound, smell, taste, they all have an inner dimension, but you and I are right now using words to describe these non-verbal realities.
Yes.
Almost, it's so contradictory, and yet it's the best we can do.
Yeah, right.
It is truly the best we can do. When we talk about getting centered at the point between the eyebrows, what does that mean?
Right.
Well, you have to experience it to know what it means.
Yes, that was, I couldn't really relate until I had the experience, and then I could relate. And as you said, trying to communicate it is almost beyond my abilities. So it's just something you have to experience. But you can be trained to experience it, to get closer and closer to it.
The first sermon that the Buddha gave, he sat down with a flower. He sat still. His students were there. He spoke no words. He held the flower out. And the sermon was not that he was holding a flower or that he was silent. It was that the beauty in the flower was beyond words. And the flower was just an image that people could latch onto.
Right.
But the flower was within them.
Oh.
And so you don't need the words if people are ready to go beyond words. But one of the gifts that you have is one of the gifts that I've been given as well, is to be able to talk about these things in a way that brings people closer to the experience and to share techniques that will actually allow them to experience, so no words are necessary.
Yes. And this is why I'm so grateful that you join us for this segment of the show, Eudithra, because your words have been very helpful for me in my recovery and on living my best life. So
beautiful. And if you don't mind, tell Divya I said hello.
I will.
All right. Blessings, my friend.
And I will take you backstage now and say goodbye to the viewing audience. Hi, Mom. All right. Eudithra has helped us understand the chakras a little bit better today. And I just wanted to tell you that if you're having trouble with doing any of these things, persistence is a virtue and you can do it. When I got started, I was so agitated all the time, and it was impossible for me to do it. But I learned to calm down. I learned when I'm calm, it's amazing what I'm capable of. And I believe that's in you. The flower is within you. Welcome to the final segment of Calm Down. And I want to introduce to you, my loyal listeners and viewers, Divya Lovewise, that wise yogi. And I would like you, at the end of every show, I'm a little bit agitated and worked up and all that kind of stuff. And I was wondering if there's something that you could do to calm me down. Could you just say goodbye to us in any way that you see fit?
Sure, I would love to.
I will take off and let you do that. Thanks again.
Okay. Well, bring yourself into a comfortable seated position, feeling your feet on the floor and letting your hands rest in your lap. Palms up or palms down is a great way to start bringing yourself back into center and focus with your own divine energy and letting go of anything that might have wanted to stick to us throughout the day that may be energy we don't want to carry throughout the day. So having this basic position, feeling grounded, even closing your eyes and taking a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And one of the ways we can bring ourselves back to center is observing with our senses what we can feel, the temperature of the air in the room, observing any sounds that you hear. Noticing any smells in the air. And then bring your awareness to your breath. As though you're watching it from the inside out. Watching the inhale wash into the body. And watching the exhale wash out of the body. Just like the waves of the ocean as they wash onto the shore. And if you find your mind still wandering, you can even place one hand on your lower belly and one hand on your heart, so that you can feel with your hands this breath washing in and washing out. And with your mind's eye, visualize this inhalation and exhalation as an internal shower, clearing away your energy so that it's refreshed, it's rejuvenated, and it's restored. Releasing your hands into your lap, just give yourself a few seconds of pause in this return to peace, enjoying it. When you are ready, you can open your eyes, wiggling your fingers and your toes, feeling grounded in your body, grounded in the best part of yourself, and you can go out into the world and carry that best part in the forefront of your mind and your heart.